Welcome to our broadcast today of our speakers series class. And class, first of all, I just want to remind you it's Group B today. You all know what I'm talking about, right? Group B, okay? Because last week we ran out of time, so there weren't any questions. So broadcast today, Group B. And I want to thank you again for your participation last week. And I'm sorry we went over a little bit last week. Some of you stuck around, and Dr. Askren got a little carried away, and that was okay. He does that when it comes to beer sometimes. I want to welcome Rick Benninghove today. And Rick is the Chief Executive Officer and General Manager of Longboat Key Club Resort. He is a great supporter of this program. He's on our board of advisors. And Longboat Key Club, for those of you who may not know, has a special relationship with us. So the Longboat Key Club is a partner hotel for us. And this was something actually that Dr. Jihan did, about 6-7 years ago. And I inherited it, fortunately, and have nurtured it, hopefully. And what that means is that their executives spend a lot of time with us. They come to classes, they participate in things we do. Of course, Rick's on our board, a lot of things. We also get to send our students there for class field trips, for internships, for practical work experience hours, and for tours. So it really is a beautiful two-way street, and we are so lucky to have this happening here in Sarasota, and hopefully we're going to be able to repeat this in Tampa someplace soon too. So without further conversation, here's Rick Benninghove. Rick, thank you.
Thank you, Pat, very much. I appreciate that. It's nice to meet all of you. I don't know if I've met, maybe one of you I may have met before, but it's nice to meet you all. I appreciate your time here with us today. I know that everybody's muted right now, but if as I'm going along, I'd like to keep it fairly informal. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and or whatnot, or strike and ask questions. I'm happy to answer questions along the way. As Pat said, we've had a very long relationship with USFSM, and we are very proud of that relationship. I've been here at the resort a little over 15 years now, I guess, and have been involved over at the school at least 11 of those years, probably, in different ways. And between myself and Bob Weil, who is our director of food and beverage, we do coordinate quite a lot with several classes, with different programs, we do a big event out here at the property, and last year we did that as a partnership with the university, and it went really, really well. We're hoping to continue that relationship where students actually came out and helped with the event itself. And, so there's quite a lot that we do together. We're really excited about it. I personally get a lot out of it. And, I do tell students all the time that my door is open. So if you have questions about segments of hospitality, I've been in this business since I was 14, and definitely worked several different segments of hospitality. So, please use me as a sounding board or for help along the way if you have questions or want anything that steer you to the right person. I can introduce you to other people quite often as well. So, please keep that in mind. I do work with quite a few students on things along that nature. So today, I was asked to talk a little bit about our renovation program that we're just completing here at the resort at Longboat Key Club. We did a pretty extensive renovation. It's over a $50 million renovation that we have been working on. So what I'd like to do first is maybe take you through a quick slideshow to show you the pictures of the area of the scope of the work, and then we'll talk a little bit about how it affected us operationally, how you would manage that from a management standpoint, and a little bit about how the interfacing happens with the contracting group, how the decisions are made, and that type of thing. So what I'd like to do in the beginning, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to try to put up a little slideshow here for us to look at, and hopefully we will all see that here in just a moment. Are you seeing the first slide? Okay, so
we are.
Great. As Pat had talked about, we have a great relationship for a very long time with your university. We greatly appreciate that. So again, with our property here, I don't know how many of you have been to the Longboat Key Club, but the Longboat Key Club itself stretches over about 5 miles from tip to tip. So we're a very large campus, so to speak, of our own. We have 2 golf courses here. We have a full tennis center, spa, fitness, a beach club, and a hotel that stretches over 7 buildings. So that's 15, 16 acres just on its own, just the hotel. So what we're going to talk about today is our island side, which is our southern parcel. And we have essentially remodeled or redeveloped over 70% of it already at this point. So starting with our signage out in front, that was the concept we started from when we did our signage. This was our road. We're a private country club. So at the front where you see that tree in the kind of center of the roadway was our original gatehouse. We have a guardhouse gatehouse. And right down the straight line where you see a vehicle traversing the road, that was our original road. It just came straight into our complex. And about 3 years ago, we started a plan to redevelop that entranceway. So that road that you see looping sort of towards the left, it comes to the middle of the street and back. That became the new road, and then we deleted the old road once it was all connected. And it was a major renovation within itself. Just that project was over a $3 million project, moving our driving range, moving our housing for our golf carts, moving the road itself. And what it's actually done for us is a couple of things. One, it's a much more exclusive entranceway instead of just this straight road that comes in, having this great feel to a turn. And now if you come down it, all the landscape is grown in so thick that it just looks gorgeous. It has a kind of a breaker sort of feel to it, if you know what that's like in the East Coast. So it gives it a really exclusive, very nice start to our property. And if you think about it, we spent over $3 million just for the roadway. And you don't really get money back on a roadway other than just your appeal and that type of thing. The other part of what that actually does for us is off the screen or to the edge of the screen where you see the tennis courts on the far right. That whole segment of our property, by moving the road, it increases the size of that land, which connects to a waterway, which connects into the bay and the Gulf from there. And so our future plans are to develop that with new condo buildings that we're going to place there, and potentially it will be a new 220-room hotel that's going to be placed along the waterway there as well. So it gives us a lot of room in the future to do further expansion. But it was a very strategic situation when we did that road. Again, both concepts, one, to allow us some future development, but secondly, to really raise the bar. And with our major renovation that we're doing in the resort, to make the entranceway really step up and become modernized, it just changes the whole package for us, which is great. This is another shot of that. You can see a little bit better. You see the tennis courts. You see a building to the far top left. That's actually the Chart House building. We own that building. We lease it out to the Chart House. But eventually, years down the road, when their lease is done, we would rebuild that as well. But that whole landmass you see there will be the future home of a combination of condos and villas or hotel and villas, yet to be determined. It's a pretty nice space that we have been able to add on by doing the roadway that we did that project. That project finished almost 2 years ago now. So we've been working on this project for quite some time. That's just another shot coming into our golf course and our island house from that same roadway. So this is the new gatehouse concept, and it actually ended up looking almost exactly like that concept, where our old gatehouse was a very small gatehouse closer to the main road. We pulled it back. We raised the elevation there to where we can bring through taller vehicles. It's a very welcoming feel, and you can see the conceptual of the tree line behind it, which is almost exactly how it turned out from the look and feel. So it gave it a really upscale feel as we come in. Those are some more conceptual as to how the gardens would look as you come in, just very upscale, very high end, very nice. So this was a conceptual for the way the new resort building was to look, and it came out extremely close to this. We've made some changes to it, but that was phase two in this entire project once the road was done to work on the main hotel. That was our main lobby building, which was built in the early 80s originally, and it was all wood shake panel. It was had a very aged look to it. I loved it. I thought it was classic. Our people really, people really enjoyed it. But it was time to modernize the resort. So this shows you the concept that we were moving over to, and also the pool concept here that we were looking to do. Complete change up from what it was before. I'm going to take you through here in a minute. I'm just kind of giving you an overview to let you sort of see what the scope of the project is, and then we'll talk a little bit about logistics within these areas here that we're talking about. Our main building, that's looking from the top here of the main building, we made major changes to it. The banquet room you see in the kind of greenish pattern, I guess it is, greenish blue, banquet room, and it butts up against the pre-function yellow space. That yellow pre-function space was space that we were able to add. We didn't used to have that, and we were a little bit limited by having banquet facilities that would empty out into the lobby without proper pre-function. So now we have proper pre-function space that allows us to do much more efficient group events and keeping it separated from our lobby area. It was a great win for us in that area. Our pool deck, we actually raised our pool deck by about 2 feet to give it a better view out to the water. 2 feet maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but it totally changes the perspective out there. And it was quite costly to do that. And we actually raised the pool bar and the pool dining seating. It used to all be on the same level with the pool deck. We raised all that up so that it had separation, and so you really felt like you were in the restaurant versus sitting on the pool deck. Huge win for us in that transition that we did there. That's a conceptual. This is an actual picture here. This is our private dining room that connects to the end of our restaurant. That was a new addition. We used to have a library that we removed. We put this in its place. It's very versatile. You can do small meetings in there. You can do dinners. We do some incredible wine dinners that we do there, some chef dinners that we do we're able to work in the space. It's a little trickier right now with COVID. We're having to go much smaller with the number of people and spread out a little bit more. But it's an incredible space, an incredible remodel that we did throughout this area. This is a picture of our new meeting rooms, a completely different look than what we had before, very modernized. You're going to see that it has a aquatic sort of theme throughout all of this area. You feel like you're on a ship or a boat within these areas of the property. I see a lot of sails and things like that. This is a picture within the restaurant itself. Again, in our restaurant, if you've seen the old, it sat lower, almost at the same level as the pool deck. We raised it up quite a way, so you get a much better look out to the sunset and to the water. We pulled the building back in places. We pushed the building out in places, so we exchanged some indoor dining for some outdoor dining. And I want to make sure everybody can hear me okay, correct? I should ask that in the beginning, I guess, but good. So with this area, we were lucky in that our ownership is extremely involved when they do a remodel or renovations. They came out here, they spent time at the property, they talked to myself, they talked to owners, they talked to members, they talked to guests, they talked to employees. They took a lot of feedback. They went and found the right design company. They brought the design company back out. We had a lot of meetings. We sat down and talked about so many small microscopic details. And what ended up happening from that is they really listened, and they listened to the fact that we used to be on the water, but you couldn't really see the water because we sat so low. So they raised everything up. They turned the windows to where we're looking more towards the typical sunset most of the year. They raised and separated the bar from the pool. They increased actual seating outside, and were able to keep the same amount of seating inside by moving the building around and just adjusting the seating. They did quite a lot to incorporate these ideas from our team, which I was very impressed with. I've worked for a lot of companies that don't do that. And what they get is what the designers say, oh, this is the design, this is how it should look. And then they're finished and you walk in the room and say, oh, they should have put this here, put that there. Because we've been living it between ourselves, the guests, the members for a long time. So, a lot of input that went in and really came out to an incredible finished product in my view. So it's just a really, really bright space, really nice space. They mix the darks and the lights, keeping the blue with the watery theme with it throughout. Outside, we have elements of fire to go with the water. Very large covered space. And then to the left, there's an open area there. We're actually still working with that. We're going to be placing like big, huge market umbrellas in that area for shading. We were going to extend the overhang all the way out, but it was actually would have been blocking a few of the guest rooms. So ownership decided to pull it back, and we're going to utilize some umbrellas in that area as well, which also helps kind of nicely with the transition from to the pool deck and inside. This is showing the pool deck area itself. This is the upper dining deck, and then beyond that's the pool area. To the right is the pool bar, extremely modernized from what it was before. And again, just a great look and feel that goes throughout this whole area. It works really well. A lot of great feedback we've been getting from our members throughout. So that's the main building, kind of a quick run through of that building. The main building itself, the lobby and meeting space, and including the pool deck area, was between a $6 and a $6.5 million project. And when we started that project, we started it quite some time ago with the planning. The planning actually went a couple of years, and then we formalized the planning towards the beginning of last year with the break ground date of June 1st of last year. And when we broke ground, we had to remove 2 restaurants, a swimming pool, and a lobby, and still run a hotel. So that is quite difficult to do when, that's the heart of the property. You think about the guest flow and the guest traffic. They're here for that beach. They're here for that pool. And what we were able to do, we made the decision, and I'll tell you a little more in a few moments as to why, to continue to operate the hotel while we were under renovation. And it was a very difficult decision because the 2 buildings that abut up against the pool, they're both 10-story buildings. We also took those down for renovations, and the building to the far south of the property on the beachfront, we took it down for renovation. So we had, out of the 226 units, we had 132 of those offline, out of order, and no pool, and 2 restaurants closed, and essentially operating off-water rooms and 1 waterfront room and a beach, and continuing to keep the hotel open for the summer and straight through was a very difficult proposition. And it was, one of the most interesting, I think, planning points in my career to be able to try to plan through that and make it work. If we were a normal hotel, and I'll explain that in a moment, but if we were a normal hotel, what ownership would probably have done with this level of a renovation was said, you know what, we're just going to shut it down for 12 months. We're going to shut it down for 10 months. We're just going to get the whole thing done, and then we'll have a grand reopening. And that might have been the smart thing to do in some ways, because you don't want to bring a guest in and not have them happy, not have them excited about where they're staying. But we are different in that we're actually a condo hotel. Do you guys know what a condo hotel is? Have you heard of that before? Condo hotel actually has individual unit owners. So it's like a condo. The units are large. They're between 650 and 1,900 square feet in size. And someone can come in and buy it right out of the MLS, right out of the open real estate market. They purchase the unit. Once they buy the unit, then they have the option of joining our hotel program. Most of them do. Over 90% are in our hotel program because it just doesn't make sense here to buy if you're not in the hotel program. So they have individual unit owners that then turn their rooms over to us, and we rent them out like a hotel. and we rent them out by the night, by the week, by the month sometimes, and then we share the income with the owner. We have some costs, they have some costs, we get some income, they get some income, and it's a really neat model. And it works very well in a lot of ways. Other than sometimes I have 226 different bosses because each owner comes to town and everybody has different ideas and they come forth with some really great ideas. But because of that scenario, it didn't work as well, the model of just shutting it down and getting it done. Because then you would have buildings that were actually sitting there idle, not necessarily getting worked on just because of the amount of staff you can bring in to do a project like this, and they're not making their money. So we kept less than half, we kept 40% of the rooms online and running while we were working on the other half of the property. So that year, between June of 2019 through December of 2019 was an extremely challenging situation. Okay, that's without knowing what was coming after that. But that was a very extreme time for us. We had to work without a kitchen for the restaurant, but we still wanted to do food and beverage at the beach. We still wanted to do food and beverage at a temporary bar that we set up, which is just off the beach to the north, so people could have a tiki bar. We still wanted to do food and beverage at our remote pool. Our remote pool, the swimming pool again was closed. Our remote pool was over 3 miles away at our Harborside. So we're having to coordinate taking our guests to our pool at Harborside, getting them out here to the beach here, bringing food out to the beach from a kitchen that was about 5 blocks away, and transporting food out. So they would order food off the menu at the beach. We'd have it cooked and brought around. Pretty major operation. We did set up a small satellite kitchen as well. But the operation in itself, Bob Weil and his team, I'm just amazed with how they were able to manage that situation, because we needed to keep the business running for the hotel guests. We also are a membership community where we have about 4,500 members here that have access to the club. So they were still coming to the beach. And we had to take great care of them when they came out as well. So we would have to sometimes 700 meals we would be preparing 5 blocks away and bringing out during the day's time. It was an amazing process. So managing that got extremely interesting. I do feel like we did a great job with it. One of the things that our ownership did, and some owners will do this and some will not, but they posted it right on their website. They said, we are doing a major renovation. There will be noise. There will be this, but this is what we have. And we put it right on our website, so when people book, they understood that we were under a major project. They didn't come in and they weren't surprised. So we gave them a value in the pricing. And when they came in, a lot of them were very happy because they saw what was going on. One reason guests really enjoyed it. So it worked really well for us to do this in stage 1, stage 2. So that project, we were scheduled to start June 1st, and the first 3 buildings we were supposed to have back by, I want to say it was November 19th, we should have had everything back, which means, okay, Thanksgiving, we have all our rooms back, right? Well, we didn't make that target. That tends to happen with renovations. Things don't come back as quick as you want. The pool was at the front end of the project. The pool was going to be about 5 months that it was offline. And once we got the pool done, we actually had to wait to open it because we were still working on the back side of the building, bringing major equipment around and things like that. So the pool was sitting ready, we couldn't open it. But we got that pool open around the 1st of December. Granted, you come and set up the pool, you were watching people up on the roof or people banging on the side of the building. You saw quite a bit of activity right beside it, so you have to manage that as well. And a lot of what we did to manage that was, again, keeping people informed, letting them know that it was happening, doing promotions, taking around, bringing around a free drink in the afternoon or doing things like that just to kind of engage the guests, to let them know as we work through it. The main building was, let's see, it was started in June and it should have been done by February 28th. That was our original goal with that building, to have it completed. So we were right at the beginning of season, a couple weeks after the beginning of season, getting that building open. Well, that building did not open until July the 4th. So there was a series of things that slowed down the project, and this seems to happen quite a bit everywhere we've worked. We've had a project that seems to slow down. So we were really struggling in some ways in season by not having that restaurant, the lobby open, but yet we had the buildings back open. Building 2 came open right around December 15th. Building 3, which is also poolside, came open just before Christmas, literally like around the 23rd of December, when we were 100% full on the 25th. And then building 1, which is the smaller building, opened up right around January the 10th. So by the main part of season, we had all the buildings back online, the front 3 buildings. The back 4 buildings we had not remodeled yet. So we went into this season in 2020. We went into the season with 3 buildings, 132 rooms that were completely remodeled, and another 4 buildings that were not yet remodeled. We called them classic. They were classic rooms. And so we went through season planning on having a phenomenal season, making as much money as we could during season with this new lobby open, with all these things going on. That was the plan. Well, we didn't have the lobby open, but we had the pool open. We had a satellite bar open. We had ways to get food to people. And we still started off with a really great season without the lobby. We were checking people in about 5 blocks away up at our clubhouse. And then we were coordinating getting them into the resort, into their suites from afar. So we literally had our front desk operations. If the guest needed to talk to our front desk, it was 5 blocks away from the resort center. So it was a big strategy. We ended up going into season again pretty strong, doing quite well. And then as you all know, in March, and I won't get too far into that, but in the 2nd or 3rd week of March, COVID just shut everything down. So it cut our season off, and we lost millions and millions and millions of dollars by losing that last part of season here in the resort. It also essentially just about stopped the construction operations. Everybody went home in that first couple of weeks of COVID. Nobody was working. So it delayed us yet again, and we were already delayed on the project of the main building. And so then when they came back and got to it and we went through it, as mentioned, we finally got the lobby open July the 4th. So then we were whole at the front end of the property. However, our next phase 3 of the project, were our other 4 buildings that we had not yet remodeled. Our goal to start those was this June of 2020. And we discussed it. Do you still do this with COVID? Do you still, all this money that our owners have lost, do you continue with the renovation? Do you put it on hold? And our group decided it's best just to get it done. Let's just get it done. So we took the other 4 buildings offline in June, and they are scheduled to come back right around now, actually. I have 1 building coming back on the 20th of this month. We'll have guests in it. 1 building will be open by the 24th of this month. And then the last 2 buildings will open by the 20th of December. So a project that should have had a gap in the middle ended up overlapping. Where we've just been in this construction mode now for a year and a half. And we put COVID in the mix on top of that. It's been a hugely stressful situation for all those involved at this property. But from a guest perspective, I think we came out ahead. They really loved it. I mean, they came and saw different stages. You'd have a one-off that didn't realize, even though we plastered it everywhere, that we were under renovations and maybe upset. But most guests were excited to see it. They're happy that we're being forthright and upfront about the whole situation. They love to see where we're at here at the end as we're finishing. So that's, kind of in a nutshell, it was a very, very difficult situation, but we had to use a lot of strategy in being able to operate throughout that process. And then this year, our summer, we've actually had a better summer than last year and pretty much on target with 2 years ago, even with COVID, because we're getting a lot of drive market, a lot of people coming to see the product. So with, I'll touch a little on pricing. It's always a question that will come up. But like I mentioned before, it was between 3 and 3.5 million for the road out front. The lobby building was a little over 6 million. And then the room renovations will total around $36 million when it's all said and done, between the physical rooms and the FF&E for the rooms. I'm going to touch base just a little bit. I didn't really ask what our timeline was here, Pat. I'm not sure what timeline I'm on. But I can't. You're muted. You're muted. Oh, You were muted, so I didn't hear you, but I'm going to keep talking until you wave and tell me to be quiet.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Bob, because I muted myself because there's people walking in the hallway here. But
Sure.
I was saying we have until 1:45. It's 1:04 now.
Okay.
So we just need to leave about, 5-10 minutes for some questions. So.
No worries. I'll probably leave a little more than on this subject, but we'll touch base a little now on the rooms portion of the renovation. I'm going to show you a couple of things there. Um, This shows our renovation before and after picture in the upper left-hand corner. That's what our rooms, our larger rooms, look like before renovation. Okay, and the bottom right is what they look like after renovation. Now, if you're like me, you look at that upper left corner and says, well, it doesn't look too bad. It looks quite nice, actually. The rooms looked fantastic when we took them down for renovation. The buildings themselves were built in 1982. So they have quite a bit of age to them, and we had some infrastructure challenges that we've been needing to deal with. They used cast iron piping back in those days for the vent pipes and the down pipes, and that has about a 20-year life to it. So if you do the math, we were past the end of life on that piping. A lot of our fire safety, life safety was not present code. Quite a lot needed to be done from the infrastructure side of things. So this was not just a furnishing remodel such as what we've done before. This was a full remodel where we took walls out, we took kitchens and bathrooms out. It was really an aggressive situation. But the furnishings from before, that furnishings you see in the upper left, believe it or not, were about 11 or 12 years old when we took them out. And in the hotel renovation, you typically see furnishings getting turned at least every 5 years. You see it's a 4 to 7 year cycle depending on the type of hotel. I mean, there's all things that go into it, but you don't ever see 11 years or 12 years. You just don't see it. With us, I was actually had just gotten here and we did our last remodel, and that was more of a furnishing package remodel. And when they bought the furniture, it was all custom made. It was all very high end, exceptional quality. And it held up. It stood the test of time. It really held up well. Now, we did bring in companies that would come in and retouch the furniture, refabric the furniture, do all these things to repair and keep them up looking great. But when we took the units under remodel, it was a little dated, but the units looked really, really, really good. One of our top competitors in town, and I'll try not to mention names, but they had new asset managers. They'd gone through a sale a year and a half or so ago, and they brought the asset managers out. We sat in a room like that to talk to them, and we're going through all of our strategies. And the one person looked and said, wow, how old's your furniture? And I kind of thought they were picking at me a little bit. I go, well, it's about 10 years old. And they go, oh my gosh, we have product 2 years old that doesn't look this good. This is amazing. I thought you just replaced it. So we were really fortunate in that route, but it was dated, it was time. So when we did this major remodel renovation, everything went out. We got rid of all of it, and nothing stayed. All the appliances, furnishings, everything. We ripped out the showers, we ripped out the kitchens. It was a pretty major change out within the rooms when we went from start to finish. You can see here the before and after in the kitchen. If you look on the left, you can barely tell that's a kitchen back there, but there's a kitchen back there. Had a little breakfast bar. It had a wall that came all the way through. It had kind of a lowered ceiling throughout that whole area. It was great, but it looked like 1980s. It looked like how it was built. So what we did as part of the renovation was we took the ceilings and we raised the ceilings up to make it look more modern. We took out the walls, that little half wall by the entry, opened it up entirely to make it more modern. Modern now is you go in a house and it's all just wide open. And so that's what we were able to do. The design team did an amazing job doing that, bringing in the stainless, doing just some great things with the single surface countertop, eliminating the breakfast bar, combining it with the dining table and giving it a more finished look. It just totally changes the look and feel from before and after. The flooring has a premium vinyl tile in it that looks like a wood look that just holds up incredibly and looks amazing. Totally modernized the unit. It's a big change that we did from before and after in that area. And here's another shot from a different angle. You see that wall that we took out. You see it opens it up. You see where it's painted everything out as well. Totally different look and totally different feel. And just raising the ceiling, which when they told me they were raising the ceiling, I didn't quite understand that. But when I saw the before and after to that, it's a complete change in the modern feel by raising that kitchen ceiling as well.
Rick, could I interrupt for just a second?
Please.
You know, that's amazing that you were able to do that with the ceilings, because that meant you had to move that air handler out someplace, which is no easy thing to do. So you ended up rerouting ductwork and stuff, didn't you?
We did. We had everything stripped down. I mean, I wish I'd had thrown some pictures in here when we hadn't all ripped apart, but I didn't today. But yes, we had to reroute quite a lot of the chases, a lot of the things going through. You see there where the ductwork was in that run right on the left side there, which you point out absolutely. We moved actually the return vents that were down on the lower wall in a lot of the units. I don't think we have a picture that really shows it, but behind that chair on the left side there's a return vent on that wall.
Right.
And we had to take that out, and the return vent's actually down on the ceiling of these units. I'm not sure if I have it that shows you that, but there's a return vent in the ceiling of the unit now that actually does several things. One, it actually quiets down the system because it takes it a little farther away from the motorized equipment. It makes it quieter, and it accomplishes a few other tasks for us, including by having that ceiling higher up, not having to do some of the push-out stuff work exactly the same. So yes, that was all changed out, completely rerouted. Our sprinkler systems, which you see on the left side there, that are hanging down from the ceiling, became the new type that are flat and thin that pop out when they need to be used. And that's actually pretty relevant in the hotel. You just Google finding out people with wedding dresses or suits or other things that go into the bathroom, and they will see that as a hanger on the ceiling, and they will hang their dress or whatnot, put their hanger on that sprinkler head. And if you pop that sprinkler head, you have thousands and thousands of gallons a minute coming out, flooding the hotel. And if you think that's just a story, it's not. I've been in 2 hotels where that's happened, and I've read about it a million times. So we now have modernized sprinkler systems as well that are flush mount to the ceiling, so it's not something that a customer can aggravate or have a challenge with.
And I would add that water that comes out, because we've had it happen before, is not clean. It is rusted, brown, nasty.
Yes, it's been sitting in the pipes for a very, 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 very long time, and it's not very pretty. I probably shouldn't tell this, but a few years ago we had we call Owners Weekend, where all of our unit owners come. We do big parties for them, and we had a white party where everybody dressed in all white. I dressed in a white suit all the way from top to bottom. And I was, after the function, I was bringing a couple of owners back over here to the hotel, and I see the fire alarms going off in building 4. So I let out the other owners, and I raced up to see what's going on. And one of the individual unit owners had touched that device and popped it, and the room was getting flooded all over the place. And there's a main cutoff underneath the building, so I had to go and pull a ladder and went up and turn off the main cutoff to try to stop the water flow. But meanwhile, they located it right next to like the overflow, and so I went from wearing white to wearing like a brown mud from head to toe. It was pretty disgusting, but it's not a fun situation.
And to those of you in the class who are hospitality management majors, because they all aren't, but some are, most are, that is why you take a course in facilities management. You think you're never going to have to do any of this stuff. You are going to be wallowing in all this stuff, from construction to chasing boiler pipes around to figure out where the cutoffs are. And I too have had the pleasure of this. So that's an important course. Thanks, Rick.
I completely agree. I think when it comes to any of your understanding how the facilities are set up, and especially emergency situation management, is probably the most important thing you'll ever deal with. I was in a hotel. I was managing a hotel that burned to the ground once. That was a terrible experience. I've had at this hotel, we had our main building underneath was completely flooded. from a water main break that was, we had about 6 feet deep of water underneath the building, shut the building down for 2 months. So between fire and flood and electric, you can really get yourself into quite a few situations. It's definitely something that you want to try to understand and be very helpful when that situation comes in. If you're leading a group, you really want to be effective during that time. And really, biggest, most important thing is you want your staff and your guests, you want them all to be safe. And so to know how to handle those situations is extremely important, for sure. So I agree with that. So let's see, I don't have too much else here with this. This shows you before and after of like one of the bathrooms. We went from a tub to a walk-in shower in all of the units. We have just a couple of tubs we kept for particular owners, but for the most part, we switched over to the walk-in. Again, it just needed to be modernized. It was an old look, an old style, and it totally changes the look and feel to our suite here. Another change before and after. We took an auxiliary sink and made it to a makeup area, which our guests really seem to enjoy. Again, just modernization, just total change out the way we look. The bedrooms, a different feel. Again, you have still a little bit of that aquatic feel. And you see the shiplap there on the walls, on the bed. A good change with that. We used to have carpets everywhere in Florida. I personally think carpet's such a great idea in hotel rooms if you can help it with all the sand and everything else. So again, now we have a single surface flooring, makes it so much better from the cleanliness standpoint and the upkeep that we work with throughout.
Rick,
yes.
Could you just repeat what you said? You were fading in and out on the audio. Maybe get closer to the microphone. But you were saying about the flooring and in Florida, and we didn't hear exactly what you said.
My apologies. So what I'm saying is, we still have some use of carpet in the bedrooms here, but throughout most of the units themselves, we went to a single surface flooring. It's premium vinyl tile. And that's a good shot there that shows you. So if you look at that picture on the right, you see the flooring. It looks like a wood grain, but it's actually a premium vinyl flooring, which is like a plastic essentially, and it holds up amazingly well. So in Florida, to have that as opposed to carpet in a lot of the big areas makes a big difference. And it's even better than the ceramic tile that we had in the kitchens before. The ceramic tile gets chipped really easily, especially if you have guests that just aren't, being as careful. So it's a great product, but I just think in Florida that you want to eliminate as much carpet as you can because it just traps so much from the sand and the other elements that you have. So that's one thing from an operational standpoint that I'm very happy that they made that adjustment here. So that's really it for the actual video or picture presentation to sort of show you through the renovations. I've got some other talking points we can go through, but that is the main parts of that. Before I go on any farther, I wanted to see if is it okay if I open up for questions now on what we've talked about, and then I can go through a little more detail on the renovation.
Students, go ahead. And Rick, by the way, just if you can get your microphone fades in and out. It may not be a microphone. I don't know what it is. But yeah.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
Have you seen a return of like group events, wedding events, and everything like that, or are you still like kind of pushing that off until 2021, hoping for more of a decline in COVID, or is it mainly still transient guests coming in?
That's a great question. When it comes to the dealing with COVID, it is slowly coming back. We are primarily a transient property right now. Historically, we were 70% transient, 30% group. Right now, we're 95% transient. I mean, we are primarily transient right now. We went without group at all for many months. We were fortunate here at our location in the Midwest, on the West Coast of Florida. We were still getting Floridians coming out. Floridians were tired of being stuck at home, and we started getting what we call the drive market or transient market coming in. People weren't flying in from other places yet too much, but people were driving here. So from pretty much May, right around Memorial Day, all the way through, we have operated weekends between 85 and 100% every week. But it's been that transient market. We're not getting group at all. So that's a great question. We started to get a little bit of group really over the last 60 days. We're starting to get a small amount of group. Mostly weddings are starting to come back. We actually got several weddings. They were going to do their weddings overseas, or they're going to do them in the islands, or they're doing them somewhere else. And they couldn't do that type of travel. They wanted to have a drive location. So we picked up some weddings that. We also had a lot of weddings that we had planned earlier in the year that delayed, that have now regrouped and are coming back now. So weddings are still happening. They're a little more intimate for the most part. Some family comes, the more close family comes. It's not as extended family as it used to be for the most part. So we are picking up that. We have picked up a few smaller corporate groups that are taking precautions, but still meeting, setting the rooms up wider, less people doing them as a wider room. We have done a fair amount of meetings like this, like what we're doing right now, where we're working with Zoom or GoToMeeting or another source. And then we may have the executive board comes and stays here, but then everybody else stays at home. So instead of getting 80 to 100 rooms out of it, we're getting 15 to 20 rooms out of it. But we're still able to house the meeting. We're still able to help facilitate it, and it keeps it contiguous so we don't lose that group in the long run. So we've done some of that as well. We did have a nice, the biggest event we've done so far was a charity golf tournament, which was a senator that had a charity golf tournament. He usually does it here in May every year. And this year they couldn't do it in May due to COVID, and so they rescheduled it, and we just successfully did that in October. And that was the bigger event that we've done so far. And it had a lot of very high level people that came in for it. So then you end up having service people and everything else, and the protection staff. And that was interesting to watch how it operated, because it's very different than it used to be, because you have to take in all the elements at this point due to COVID. So that particular event, we totally changed the way we did a lot of the functions to try to not have as many of the gatherings, but they still could do the golf, and they could still do smaller gatherings. They could still do things. So we are getting, we're working on strategies to be able to reintroduce group business, but in a smarter way in the short term. So it's starting, but it's slow.
Yeah, like my curiosity stemmed from, I work at the Westin right now, and about the same thing. About 2.5 months, we've seen weddings start coming back in that were delayed, postponed, and they start to come back in now. They're kind of feeling more comfortable, but they are more, they're smaller groups. They're smaller, more intimate weddings, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's the same trend. Absolutely. Great question. Other questions?
I have one.
Okay.
During construction, with COVID happening, like kind of in the middle of it, do you think, because you most likely not having as many guests, do you think that actually kind of helped not having a lot of people around? I mean, I understand workers might not have been as much there either.
Sure. No, that's a great question. I think that in the beginning, I mean, when it got real, like late March, when things got kind of crazy for a little while, it really slowed us down, because almost none of the construction people nobody went to work. I mean, nobody was comfortable going anywhere.
Yeah.
So we almost halted. We had a few of the people that were here working, but outside of that, we almost halted for a few weeks. So that really put a burden on us. The other burden that comes out of it that you wouldn't necessarily think about initially is supply chain. Supply chain got really in trouble due to COVID. We were lucky here in a big way, because when we did our room renovations, we did it in 2 phases. And because all these individual owners were paying for a portion of it, everybody wanted to pay the same price. It wasn't fair for the person the first year to pay less than the person the second year, because pricing of cement went up, or couches or whatever. So we actually pre-purchased most of the goods for the entire renovation when we were doing phase 1. We had it all in a warehouse that we bought. So if it wasn't for that, I think COVID would have really slowed us down. Because if you go to you go to Office Depot now and try to buy a fax machine or a printer or things like that, and I don't know about now, but a month ago it was way backed up because of supply chain issues that are going on in this world right now. So that would have slowed us down, but it didn't too much because we had held some supplies. It did on some of the minor supplies. We had some issues. Once the actual main part of your question, though, when we kind of got back to work, let's say mid-April, when we were back working, and we had about a month where we had almost no guests, and then they were working. Yes, they probably made up quite a bit of time during that time because there was really no guests in the way. And we said, just make as much noise on this main building as you can and try to get it done when people aren't around. So in a way, that did help us during that month. So I think overall we probably gained a couple of weeks out of the whole thing throughout the process. But it was a double-edged sword. It worked for us and against us. So that's a great question, Devin. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have other questions? No, not for now. Oh,
we have one question, Dr. Pat, from YouTube.
Yeah, go ahead.
Rick, this question is about the Condo Hotel. The viewer is asking if you feel that it is more challenging to manage a condo hotel than a regular hotel.
Great question. Yes. The answer to that is absolutely yes. It is very challenging to manage a condo hotel, different than a regular hotel in that there's so many moving parts to it. If you're in a regular hotel and a piece of glass, like one of the glasses in the kitchen breaks, you just pull one out of the closet, and you put it back in the kitchen, and it's cost to the hotel, it's the cost of doing business, and you move forward. If it's a condo hotel, you have to stop and say, okay, does that belong to the owner? Does that belong to us? Do I charge the owner? How do I charge the owner? How do I document this breakage so the owner understands what happened? There's a major process to that just on the front end. When you go in to clean a room and do an inspection, there's many layers to that inspection now, whereas again, I've worked in hotels where the housekeepers are self-inspecting. So one person goes in and cleans the room and they move on. Here we have to have a secondary inspector, like a lot of hotels do anyway, but a secondary inspector that comes through because they're also doing inventory. They have to inventory that room. They have to look at the quality of everything. They have to protect that individual owner. So that just in itself gets a lot more complicated. On the back end of it, when it comes to the revenue, it's also very, it is more complex that way as well, because when someone comes to check in, let's say you have a room on the ground level facing a tree, and then you have a room on the 10th floor facing the Gulf of Mexico, but they're both considered beach view. Where does everybody want to stay? But somebody owns that ground level room and somebody owns that top level room, and your goal is to try to even out that revenue to make it fair for everyone. So we actually have a system here. We use the Opera system that balances that. So every time I go to block a room, it pushes to the top, the least rented room, to try to sell that room first, which is different in a condo hotel than a normal hotel in a lot of ways. It's actually a good thing though, because your wear and tear, it spreads it out a little bit more. So if you're in a traditional hotel, that 10th floor room might get worn out a lot quicker than the other. Now with COVID, it's just the opposite. Everybody wants to stay on the ground level, so things are changing. But no, it is a lot more complicated, and you have a lot of owners to answer to. They come in and have different viewpoints, and you have to work very carefully with them. There's a lot of legal regulations that are different in a condo hotel. It's a very complex animal. I'm extremely happy that I got involved in it. I love the fact that I've been involved in it, but it is definitely a different animal.
Rick, I'd like to ask a follow-up question on what they just asked you.
Sure.
So two things. One is, when your units sell, I mean, when somebody buys one of the condo units, do they agree then that they're putting the furniture in and the decor that you have dictated for that room, right?
Correct.
Okay, and so they don't make. They cannot make owner-driven changes in that room, I would assume.
Correct, almost without exception.
Yeah, and then do you have to provide them with storage for stuff that they want to use when they're there for the room or not?
We actually have in every unit, there's an owner closet. It's a lockable closet that they're able to keep their self-belongings in if they'd like. Some owners don't use it, they leave it open, the guests use it, and other owners will use it and have it locked off. They do have an owner's closet. And there's different models of condo hotels. Our condo hotel, again, the program was developed in the early 80s. I think they did a really great job the way they laid it out. It protects the owners, it protects us as the operator. It's a good partnership. I've seen some plans that don't work as well, but ours puts a lot of pressure on us to make sure we're performing for those owners. When an owner comes in our model, they don't have to be in our hotel program. They can actually say, I just bought this unit, I'm taking it out of the hotel program, I'm going to live here, or I'm going to have somebody else rent it. In that case, we change the locks, we hand them the key, and we walk away from it.
And then they can do whatever they want to in there.
They can do pretty much whatever they want with it. And they'll live there, they'll try to rent it on their own. Now, if they rent it on their own, they don't get access to the club for their guests.
Right.
So it gets a little complicated, and it doesn't pay for them to do that. But we do have some that do it. And so if they want to come into the program, if they've never been in the program since our last remodel, yes, they have to make that room look the same. We would we'd give them a price to go in and have a remodeling group go in and make the room look as close to our rooms as possible. Right. The consistency is important.
Right. And just as a follow-up too on your comment on the opera system, and by the way, for those of, I don't know, you've all had the lodging operations class, I guess, right? Except for you, Sid, because you're not in the program, but you wish you had it, but almost. But so Opera is a very common, and it's a very good Windows, one of the first Windows systems that came out. I would assume, Rick, I mean, it sounds great that it's rotating so that it's filling up evenly. I would assume that the staff, the front office receptionist who's checking a guest in, do they have the ability to overrule the system, or do they have to go get a manager to overrule it?
No, in our case, they have the ability to override it. I mean, we're here to take care of the guests. So we're going to put them in the room that comes up in most cases. But if the guest actually put a request in, they wrote on their note line online when they booked, I want to be at the end of the hallway, I want to be away from the elevator, right. I want to be high, I want to be low, I want to be near the pool, whatever it might be, we're going to override the system before the guest even comes because we're anticipating their need at that point from the request. So everybody here has the ability to do that. We don't restrict it, because if you restrict it, then you're not taking care of that guest.
Right, and you see, this is great. I mean, it's everybody, when I started, then we had no computers, so we used room racks to do all this stuff. But you did the same thing.
Me too.
Ahead of time, and then people come in and they want to change it, so it happens. You don't have room racks, Rick. You never saw one.
Oh yeah, no, I worked on room racks. I was in a conversion. I worked in the 80s.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah, I was a teenager working in hotels. We had a rolling board that you would roll.
Oh yeah.
To the calendar month, and you'd write it in, and you'd change the color of the ink based on what you were doing.
These kids today don't know how good they have it.
You had the keys hanging on the wall behind you, and if the key was gone, the room was occupied.
Right.
I definitely worked in that system.
Yeah. Who's got another question?
I actually have another question.
Okay, Cole, go.
So I know that the ownership, like the condo owners themselves, did put an investment into this renovation.
Absolutely.
Did any of them get in a sense cold feet when COVID hit, and they were kind of worried about their investment and what was going on in that aspect?
I'm sure some did. I think the cold feet came in the very beginning of the project, even more so, I believe. We talked about this project for probably 6 years. That's why we took so long to get to this renovation, because it was a more expensive renovation than anything we'd done before because of the infrastructure. So we were ready to do a renovation probably 7 years ago with all the soft goods and everything else, and it would have been X amount of dollars. But the association needed to deal with the piping. So for us to go in and put a new shower in 2 years, you're going to tear out to fix the wall behind the piping behind it doesn't make a lot of sense. So we had to negotiate with the individual unit owners and their board for several years to all agree. Everybody wanted to do it. Everybody knew what needed to be done. It was just planning it so it worked good for everybody, that we all did the right thing at the right time. So there was a lot of angst in the beginning because it was a very expensive project. I mean, it was a $36 million project in the rooms. So what happened was the people at that point that had cold feet over the project, they put their unit up for sale. They sold it to somebody who came in and understood what was happening, and they priced it in. So when we went to do the remodel, we had near 100% of the people doing it. And they didn't have a choice in the infrastructure. That had to be done no matter what, because it was an association project. But to be in the program, you had to do the front end of the project too. So some people got cold feet. They mostly sold. Once we're in the project, I'm certain there are some owners that it caused some great angst for, because it created some challenges in income coming in with a very costly project. But for the most part, owners that I have spoken with, they understand that it is a very necessary situation, and most of them have ridden through it pretty well.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Amelia.
I'm a little confused about this whole concept. So, like, are they actually buying a room at this property? And then is it like a regular lease term, or is it more so like a hotel's process, check in, check out type of thing?
That's a great question. So the condo hotel, there's different concepts. There's hotel, which is just owned by one company or one individual. You have timeshare, which is a totally different animal. That's you own a week at a time. And then a condo hotel, they actually purchase it just like you'd purchase a condo, or you would purchase a home. So they would come here and purchase a room here. Now these rooms look more like condominiums than rooms. They go up to 1,800 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. Some are 600 square feet that are more like double the size of a hotel room. But they would come in and buy, let's say they bought a deluxe 2-bedroom, 2-bath. They may spend $1.3, $1.4 million to buy that unit. And then they put it into the hotel program with us. So once they give it to us, and we treat it more like a hotel room at that point, we change the locks into our locking system. We put our inventory in there, and we rent it to the public just like a hotel. A person coming in off the street does not know that it's a condo hotel necessarily. They go online, they say, oh, I'm going to rent this for X amount of dollars a night. They come, they check in with us. They might stay 2 nights, they might stay 4 nights, they could stay 2 weeks. It just depends. But it's treated just like a hotel from the guest perspective. The guest comes, checks in, stays with us, they check out, we clean the room up, we turn it over for the next guest, and we do it again. The difference is we have a partner in the individual unit owner that they get a portion of the revenue from when that guest stayed, and then we get a portion of the revenue from when that guest stayed. So it's kind of a complex situation. This one was done in the 80s, early 80s. It was one of the first ones in the country done. It was actually done by Arvida, which became Arvida Disney, which then Disney used this property as a model for many of their properties that they've done up in Orlando. So it has some rich history with that. But the condo hotel, it is a little complex in that it's a condo on the surface, because you can go to any realtor and buy a unit here. You don't buy it from us. You buy it from the other individual through a realtor or directly, but through the open exchange. And then you have a separate contractor agreement with us to actually rent it for you.
And just as a follow-up, Akeelia, that was a great question, and because it's complicated. But as a follow-up to that, Rick, then when the owner of the unit wants to use the unit for a week, a day, whatever the period might be, I would assume, obviously, you take it out of the rental inventory for that period of time, right? And then you charge them, I am sure, for some kind of servicing of that room.
Yes. What happens when an owner joins our program by the contract agreement? They have 28 days a year they can use their unit.
Okay.
Grass. They get 14 days during the 6 months of what we consider season. They get 14 days in the 6 months that we consider off season. And they can come and stay all 14 days right in a row of each of those periods, or they can come in one night at a time and leave and come back. But they get those 28 days without paying us for the usage. They do, however, pay for housekeeping services. So they have to pay a departure cleaning fee, but then it's their option while they're here if they wanted housekeeping during their stay or if they wanted to skip it. So that's the way it works. And some people, that's hard to understand. Well, wait a minute, I bought this unit. I can stay in it whenever I want. But if we allowed that and we didn't put restrictions on it, then on holidays, on peak periods, we would be full with owners. We couldn't rent to a guest. And then that's counterproductive because then a guest doesn't want to come other times and they can't come during peak time. So by putting a reasonable restriction of 28 days on it, the owner gets a great amount of usage, but we still have a hotel to operate.
And the owner knows that when they buy the unit too, right?
It's all part of the deed restrictions. It's all built in.
Not a surprise. Great.
Or in the contract, actually. Yeah.
Okay, we have, I think, Sam, we haven't heard from you and we need to.
Eric, so I have a question too. What type of benefits did you bring to the Longboat Key Club after working there for so many years? Like, do you have strong connections to your coworkers and the owners?
Sam, thank you. I appreciate that question. I mean, I do believe, I've certainly been here a long time. I've been through multiple owners. I've been through multiple managements. I've been through 2 remodels. I've got to know the individual unit owners. I know extremely well for the most part. We have an annual meeting where they come and we do functions and we spend a lot of time with them. Myself and one other person are pretty much the liaison to those owners. So I do feel that my longevity here does help. It helps our present ownership for me to be that link at times. When an owner has a question, they'll just call me to figure out, let's cut through it, what's going on. So I think that's beneficial. There's countless number of times where it's where's this, where's that when it comes to a facility situation. If you have changes and we're looking for something, I've forgotten more about this property than I guess maybe I want to, but I certainly remember quite a few things and things happen. And so yes, within this building in this place, and you can find that. So, I do think having longevity is helpful, but you can't rest on that. I mean, I believe every day is a new day. I'm always looking for newness and new ways of doing things at this property, and I'm never happy with where it is. I always want to see progression. So if each day we come in and challenge ourselves, then it's a balance between those two areas. This property is lucky. We have quite a few people that have been here for a long time. There are people that have been here longer than me. Bob Waller, Director of Food and Beverage, has been here for probably 19 years, I would say. We got people that have been here as long as 35 years at this property.
And Bob was the executive chef before, and now he's the chief guy.
Correct.
Speaking of Bob, Rick, I was fascinated last year. Just so you all know, again, they're partners to us, more than partners. They're big supporters, and so we participated in this big wine tasting event they did. I forget what it was called this week last year actually, or the week before, and so they auctioned us off, and so Bob Weil is head of food and beverage, so he of course he took care of all the details. So Dr. Joe and I think Angad was with us too. And we went and cooked this dinner there for somebody who won us in the auction. My question, Rick, is that how many units do you have where people live permanently? Because this dinner we cooked was in one of the units, and it was for all people who live permanently. And there was, I don't know, there were 8 people there, I think, so that's at least 4 units, I guess.
Yeah, I'd have to look back to see how many units we did use during that, but it definitely.
No, I mean, in general, how many of your units are
people living in them?
Yeah.
We have, as far as keys in the hotel, it's 227 that we currently have in the program out of 242. So most of them are in the program. And some of those are lockout. So there's 10, 14, 15, 16, about 17, 18 units. Probably actually about 14 units when you take out the fact that some of them are connectors that are non-participating owners. It's not a great number.
Yeah, but they can pay for club privileges though, right?
Correct. They can join the club and then they have full access to everything.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they still have access to pool and beach. They just don't have access outside of that.
Right. I mean, it's pretty amazing how that was serviced that night too. I mean, it really opened my eyes to what you people are all about. I mean, they brought everything we needed up from the kitchen. It was like a clock, It was.
I saw a couple of questions that came in through chat also.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
This is from YouTube, Rick. If you can maybe address them, do you want me to read or you can see it?
I can see it. I can see it. So we have one which is what's the expected time for renovations to return on investment ROI? It's a great question. I would say that you're easily 3 years in to return that investment. I think on it. Don't quote me exactly on that number, but I think easily that to get back up to where it is, because this was not a typical renovation. A typical renovation is a lot less costly. You're doing case goods, you're doing basics. This was not just a hotel renovation. This was a homeowners association renovation. This is a huge part of their expense. So it's a little harder to say return on investment on that, because really, when you're dealing with infrastructure, your return on that's going to come when you sell the product, not when you're renting the product. So what we're looking to return is their investment on the physical nature of the product, the case goods, the furnishings, the FF&E, that type of thing. Second question that came up was, did the ADR need to increase to create return on investment? If yes, to what percent and why? So ADR, for anybody that doesn't know, is that your average daily rate, what you're charging the guests. Need to, I think from an owner's perspective, they probably would say it needed to. I think the reality is, when you have a brand new product, the expectation is that it's going to cost more going in. We definitely have been able to see a nice lift in our average rates, and it will certainly shorten the time for that return on investment. And, an owner, when they put that kind of money in, we put over $30 million into the room shared between these owners, and then some by us. That is a large amount of capital to put out there. So it is important that our ADR increases. I mean, I think when we went out of renovation to come into renovation, we increased our ADR by over 20% coming out of the gate. But it doesn't stop there. We actually use a computerized system that helps us setting our rates and adjusting our rates, so it works off of demand, and the demand has been pretty high, even including with what's going on in the world right now. Due to the new renovation. So we're going to continue to see lift in that. The last question that came in here said, when you negotiate a new contract with owners again, how do you manage your competitors? I'm assuming you're talking about competitors of who else might be renting our units or be willing to rent our units.
I get so.
Is that correct? We think?
Yeah, I think so.
So with a lot of condo hotels, that's a bigger challenge, I think, than with us. If you were a downtown product and you didn't have a lot of amenities, but you were running a condo hotel and it was open market where somebody else could come in and rent it a different way, I think that really is a great question. It would be a hard one to say exactly how you can manage it over someone else. I think it becomes, at that point, how are you going to market the product? How are you going to sell the product? How are you going to better care for the product because you're right there? So those are important factors in that negotiation. For us, what's really important, we own the building that's the lobby, the restaurant, in the center of the project. So that helps keep us extremely competitive. If someone comes to check in with us, we're the only ones they can check in with. We're not going to rent it for someone else. We also have a club that stretches over 5 miles, and when you check into our hotel, you get essentially temporary club access membership to be able to utilize 6 different food and beverage outlets on this property, tennis center, 2 different golf courses, an incredible spa, fitness center, beach club. Those are things that we can offer and our competitors cannot offer. So there are a couple of units. There's probably about 4 or 5 units here that are rented by a third-party rental agency on the island. And if you look at their average daily rate compared to ours, and I haven't done it in a little while, but the last time I looked at it, it was about half of what we're able to charge when they're doing it that way. So they may have a little different split. We may charge a little more on the percentage with an owner than a competitor might, but that owner is still going to get a huge amount more value because our average rate is going to be quite a bit higher because there's so much value in the club access, and that owner, by participating in the contract with us, gets that advantage.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank
We
you.
are out of time, unfortunately. Cole, I know you have to leave to go to a class, so if we see you black out, we'll know why.
Oh,
And-
no, class got canceled. I'm here for the long haul.
Okay, good.
Awesome.
Rick, that was great. And by the way, two of those questions were, you want to know what a dedicated faculty you have here. Two of those questions were from Dr. Karmer, who is joining us here today, watching. He thinks he's going to get bonus points for all this, and he is,
Absolutely.
because he's participating, and he's the guy that's teaching the facilities course too. So that's great to hear all this. Rick, I have before we thank you finally, I do have one more question quickly.
Sure.
I'm just curious, why did the designers decide to put, I never understood this in Florida, to put those little table fireplaces in your new restaurant in Florida where it's 95 degrees outside in the summer? I'm just curious. I used to see that in Las Vegas too.
You're trying to stump me right here at the end. I think it's more, there's two reasons. One, it's a design element. When you have water and you can balance it with fire, it's an incredible design element. We also have torches on the sides of the buildings by the entrance door, so you see fire there. And along the side of the pool deck, you see fire there. But secondly, if you came around a couple nights ago, you would have needed the fire out there, because we do get cool nights in Florida too, believe it or not.
Yeah, we do. So that was good from the aesthetic. Rick, before we end the class, I just want to ask you if you could hang on for 1 second. There's something I need to ask you that the students don't need to spend their time on. So
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you. And I want to thank you students again for being in attendance today, asking great questions. And I want to thank the audience that we have around the world, a lot of them in Turkey, I think. Hello to all you people in Turkey. And thank you for joining us today. Next week's guest, distinguished speaker, is going to be from a restaurant called Dick. His name is Dick Rivera, and he's from a restaurant called Bricks Smoked Meats here in Sarasota. Although Dick has been involved with the National Restaurant Association obviously at the national level, and was vice president of a couple of large chain restaurant companies. So he's got a lot he can tell us about. And he's a really nice guy. He's almost as nice as Rick Benninghove was. So it's all good. So students, thank you very much. We'll see you next week. And Rick, if you could hang in for a second.
A pleasure. Thank you, students. A pleasure meeting all of you.